So today I want to just talk you through and walk you through how to approach the question 2D on the English language paper 1. So here it is. As you can see, it asks you to reread 2 paragraphs. It'll always be 2. In this case, it's paragraphs 2 and 14. Paragraph 2 begins in front of a sleigh and is about Max's expectations and experience in the Dead Sea. Paragraph 14 begins easier in our minds and is about Max and Helmut, in what Max and Helmut see while driving in the evening. So, explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include the use of imagery. Okay, so let's just break this down a little bit before we get into looking at the paragraphs and then a response. We do need to be thinking about the effect on the reader where we can. So if we have a look at this extract to which this question refers, this is Tetsi, An Incredible Journey. You can see what I've done is I've already begun to number the paragraphs. So paragraph 2 is numbered and paragraph 14 is numbered. So to make sure that the examples I'm picking out are from the correct paragraphs. So it's always a good idea to number the paragraphs for text C. So let's have a look. In front of us lay the leaden expanse of the Dead Sea. Was it true that it was impossible to sink in it? I tried for myself while Helmut looked on and smiled. You lie on top of the water motionless like a cork. Swimming in the conventional sense is not possible, since hands and feet flail around in the air like useless paddles. According to the brochures, one could read a newspaper undisturbed or hold up a sunshade. A local photographer lurked nearby. So you can see I've highlighted 3 phrases there, and they're going to be the ones that I unpack in the response. And here, paragraph 14. Easier in our minds, we waited for darkness to fall before we drove on. Night journeys are not only cooler but are beautiful in the east. Over the landscape arched a sky, sparkling with a plethora of stars. Along the rocks of the gorge huddled flocks of storks, shining like patches of snow as the light danced on their plumage. So obviously there's some good examples of imagery in here. We don't need to read the rest because those are my 3 examples that we're going to unpack. Okay, so let's have a look at the response. I've put the question at the top there, just as a reminder. Okay, so I think there's really 2 ways that you can go about answering question 2D. One is to do it in paragraphs like this, and the other one is to do it almost, quote by quote with some unpacking, and of course, talking about and explaining the effects on the reader, how and why the writer might have used these words or phrases. So, in paragraph 2, the writer presents the strange and humorous reality of swimming in a dead sea. Max uses the leaden expanse of a dead sea to convey that he may be gloomy about the journey, as leaden suggests greyness to the reader. The simile, you lie on top of the water, motionless like a cork, helps the reader feel the unusual sensation of bathing in the Dead Sea because corks float in water as if weightless. The simile, hands and feet flail around like useless paddles, suggests something comic and unexpected for bathers. The verb flail connotes the wild movements of the bathers as they are not used to the buoyancy of the water due to the salt levels, and the effect is somewhat humorous. Right, before we look at the next paragraph, let's just have a look at what we're doing here. So, what you're going to want to do, let me zoom in, what you're going to want to do is in this first sentence here, for each of the paragraphs, you must give a sense of an overview, i.e., what's the mood, the atmosphere, what do you think the writer is trying to do? That is in the mark scheme, and the examiners really are expecting that. So, sentence 1 must cover the sense of what's going on in this paragraph. So, Here in paragraph 2, the writer presents the strange and humorous reality of swimming in the Dead Sea. And so we're inferring from what's there that the writer's trying to make it kind of amusing and slightly comical. In terms of the quotes, you can see they're relatively short. You're explaining what they're trying to do. Okay. And you're also, very importantly, trying to talk about the effects on the reader or you. That's in the mark scheme. It's also in the question. So you must talk about, the effect of this is, or how this is going to influence the reader. Here you can see we've identified an example of imagery. In this one, it is a simile. So where you see simile, metaphor, personification, or implied meaning, then please, obviously that's one to pick out, and then you are fulfilling that aspect of the question. You lie on top of the water like a cork. Obviously, like a cork is a simile. And we're also talking about the effect on the reader. Similarly, you might want to pick out a quote like this and zoom in or unpack a particular word within that quote. That's entirely fine. Or you could just go straight to the verb and unpack that. Remember, in the question, it does say words or phrases. Right, let's have a look at the next paragraph. In paragraph 4, the writer creates a rather romantic scene at nighttime. Again, there's that sense of an overview that he's trying to create a sense of this being quite a romantic romantic scene, and it is at nighttime. Max uses the phrase, a sky sparkling with a plethora of stars. Plethora allows us to see how vast the number of stars is when in the desert and away from light pollution. There, of course, is the effect on you, the reader. He uses a simile, to another example of imagery, stalks shining like patches of snow, to vividly convey to the reader how bright and white the plumage of the storks is under the stars and against the darkness of the night. Whoops. He also uses personification, so another example of imagery, of the light danced on their plumage. Here, the verb danced, so we've gone back into the quote, suggests the reflection of the water on their feathers is almost calming and rhythmical, almost magical for the reader. And as you can see, I don't need to worry too much about the word count, but it is about being quite brief. The word count says 200 to 300 words. Really more to help you be really kind of precise and concise with your response here. You don't want to spend too long on this, though it is worth 15 marks. So the other way of doing it is like this. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can see basically what I've done here is I've written this out with an overview. Paragraph 2, same. And what I've done is instead of writing it as a sort of a flowing paragraph, I've just got quote 1 from that paragraph, quote 2, and quote 3 here, and written it as quote, then unpacking it and the effect on the reader. So here, for example, the leaden expanse of a Dead Sea conveys that he may be gloomy about the journey, as leaden suggests greyness to the reader. Exactly the same way as what I've done here. It's just separated out. So if you are somebody who kind of loses count of where you're at, how many quotes you've included, whether you fully unpack them, this might be a way. And of course, you could actually number these if you wanted to. Quote 1, 2, and 3. Just make sure, of course, you're giving that overview at the start. And the same here. You see quote 1, quote 2, and quote 3. Save myself a few words. So these are two different ways that you can approach and write your response up to question 2D. So what are the kind of takeaways from this? Well, I think making sure that you keep your quotes short, phrases or individual words is fine. Remember, you must include at least one example of imagery, something like a simile, a metaphor, personification, that kind of thing. Remember to zoom in on specific words and unpack them, talk about the connotations of them. And also, really importantly, you must explain the effect on the reader or you, and maybe mention, what the purpose or intention is of the writer. Okay, if it's been useful, let me know. If you've got any further questions, again, get in touch. Just drop a comment below. And in the next video, what we'll look at is a question 3, which I know students find hard as well. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.